This podcast is made possible by the listener members of Nashville Public Radio.
This is the Nash Villager Podcast. It's January 9th, 2025. On this day in 1431, the court of the Catholic Church began preliminary hearings in what would become the trial of a young French woman on charges of heresy. Joan of Arc was ultimately found guilty because she would not renounce her claims to have seen visions from God or agree to stop wearing men's clothing. She was burned at the stake because that was the preferred method for dealing with heretics. The church was really worried about people with unorthodox beliefs being venerated as martyrs. And given the customs of the time, there was a real chance that a heretic's followers would treat remains as holy relics. So they used a form of execution that would utterly destroy the body. Usually, it worked pretty well. Most medieval heretics are people you have never, ever heard about. But they couldn't stop the love for Joan of Arc. And in fact, just 20 years later, the church reversed its decision, and ultimately, she came to be revered as a saint. Joan of Arc, the Maid of Orleans, is the patron saint of New Orleans. A very shiny golden statue of her on a horse that some have nicknamed Joni on the Pony, stands in the French Quarter, just a few blocks away from the spot where a pickup truck plowed through people this New Year's. And this week, on Monday, a gathering in her name became a chance for the people of that city to take back their own streets. Ever since Hurricane Katrina, the first parade of the Mardi Gras season belongs to the crew of Joan of Arc. They march on foot each January 6th. And this year, the group leaned especially hard into one of their mottos, a phrase attributed to Joan: "I am not afraid. I was born for this." I'm Nina Cardona, and this is your daily digest of what's happening around Middle Tennessee from Nashville Public Radio, WPLN News. The Nashville discussion after that New Year's tragedy quickly turned to a discussion of what this city should be doing to head off a similar incident. It's an important conversation to have. Lower Broad offers a similar kind of tempting target. Like Bourbon Street, it's one of those places where people come from all over to have fun and party their cares away. And it's where folks trying to make a horrible, noticeable impact can find an awful lot of targets for whatever troubled statements they have in mind. It's interesting timing, given that there are already two other discussions of downtown Nashville safety going on. There's the effort from Metro Council to identify improvements that might prevent deadly accidents. Last year, we certainly got a horrible lesson in how dangerous a mix it is to have so many drunk people wandering out of bars in a neighborhood bordered on one side by steep drop-offs to the Cumberland River. And then there's the bill up for consideration in this year's state legislative session that seeks to create more tools for dealing with gatherings of hate groups. Several times last year, neo-Nazi and white nationalist groups decided downtown Nashville was the place to march and get attention for their noxious messages. Those demonstrations stoked fear that one time the hate may not stop at yelling and marching. And so lawmakers are talking about creating some more tools for law enforcement to crack down on gatherings like that. But some of the specifics of that bill seem to be latching on to very specific things that very specific groups chose to do on that one specific occasion. For instance, one of those hate groups brought its members in by loading them into the back of a box truck. So the bill makes it illegal to transport people that way. Now, don't get me wrong, it probably should be illegal anyway, just from a safety standpoint. But there are all kinds of other ways that hateful people could be brought into a place. The method of transport wasn't the issue. The attitude they brought with them was the real problem. And even when we look at lessons learned from the French Quarter truck attack, there's a certain degree of futility by getting too focused on the specifics. Last week, Mayor Freddie O'Connell said the city's been looking at ways to improve our options for bollards and other barricades that could keep someone from driving into crowds. And yes, that's really important, and we absolutely should be thinking about that. But unfortunately, people wanting to make a big impact can be creative in ways that we just can't anticipate. I mean, who would have looked at the RV parked on 2nd Avenue on Christmas Eve 2020 and imagined that its owner had rigged it up to fill with gas so that the whole thing would become a giant bomb the next morning? I'm reminded of the time my dad flew to Israel in the 80s on an El Al flight. And he said the security procedures were like nothing else he'd ever experienced. It wasn't really about checking his luggage to see what was inside, although they did some of that. An agent basically interviewed him for a moment to watch for his body language and the way that he answered questions. Because ultimately, the most dangerous thing about dangerous people is their minds. It's the ideas they hold and their willingness to go very, very far to act on those ideas. And I don't know what the answer is to protecting ourselves against people who are out to do harm on an eye-catching scale. But I suspect the solution is deeper and more complex than bollards and box trucks. In just a few minutes, we explore the surprising origin story for the song Empty Trainload of Sky. That's coming up after the newscast.
Here's the mantra I think about at WPLN. We connect the dots. It captures a mindset that our journalism is not merely about the latest press release or proclamations by officials. Instead, we can develop expertise, dig deeper, and look to history to understand what's happening now. I'm Tony Gonzalez, news director. When I'm planning coverage and editing stories, the best part is being part of a team that's curious about our community and invested in its future.
Here's the latest from WPLN News. Middle Tennessee should brace for a winter storm tomorrow with difficult travel conditions. Forecasters continue to say that the entire region will see 3 to 6 inches of snow, with some locations getting up to 8 inches. Snowfall is likely to begin early tomorrow morning and continue through the evening. Travel impacts are expected to continue into the weekend, and cold temperatures will slow any melting for several days. Patrick Sheehan directs the Tennessee Emergency Management Agency. At a press conference yesterday, he gave this advice for preparing to hunker down.
Encourage anyone in Tennessee that needs groceries to get their French toast ingredients tomorrow before the snowfall begins.
Once the snow arrives early tomorrow, Sheehan says, stay home if you can. If you must drive, have salt or kitty litter in your car so you can pour it on the road if you get stuck in the snow. Move outdoors pets inside and cover up hoses or exposed outdoor pipes. State road crews began brining major roadways yesterday, and TDOT is urging drivers to avoid travel tomorrow. The entire midstate will be under a winter storm watch as of tomorrow morning. WPLN's Caroline Eggers reports on how the event stacks up compared to the state's annual snow averages.
Most of Tennessee gets about 4 to 6 inches of snow per year. In Nashville, we have an average of 4.7 inches. At least, that's according to our most recent 30-year average. If you include all data from the National Weather Service going back over a century, then our average is 8 inches of snow per year. Across the state, some areas in the Cumberland Plateau and East Tennessee have higher annual averages. And there's one place that seems otherworldly compared to the rest of the state. In the Smoky Mountains, Mount LeConte gets an average of 75 inches of snow per year.
Closures are already being announced, among them some healthcare facilities. All VA Tennessee Valley Healthcare System outpatient clinics and administrative offices will be closed tomorrow and Saturday. The Nashville VA and Alvin C. York VA medical centers will remain operational for emergency and urgent care. Nashville's transit referendum, in which voters approved a new tax last November, is facing a legal challenge that threatens to block its implementation. WPLN Cynthia Abrams reports the lawsuit is racing through the court, with lawyers presenting arguments yesterday.
The key question is whether the referendum follows state law. Attorney Kurt Clements, representing the opposition group, focused his argument on the state's definition of public transit. This, he said, doesn't include things like sidewalks and signals, which are cornerstones of the city's plan.
They're trying to turn a mass transit system into anything that may be connected to or result in arriving at a transportation facility or a bus stop.
But Metro argued that they are developing those sidewalks and systems specifically around places receiving bus upgrades. Here's attorney Jeff Yarbrough.
It is not feasible to think about how you would implement any type of mass transit system without thinking about the right-of-way in which that transit system is operating.
The trial has been expedited, and the judge intends to make a decision before the new transit sales tax is set to take effect in February. Cynthia Abrams, WPLN News.
Tennessee's legislative session starts next week, but Governor Bill Lee is already looking ahead to a possible special session focusing on expanding school vouchers and providing relief for areas hard hit by Tropical Storm Helene. WPLN's Miriam reports.
Lee says he hasn't determined if or when a possible special session on school vouchers will take place, but he is looking at sooner rather than later.
If it's going to be implemented for this year, then we'll have to act quickly, either in the very beginning of session or in a special session.
Democratic lawmakers have criticized the idea of lumping disaster relief with the voucher program and point to test scores which show students currently in the pilot program are underperforming.
Comparing inner city students in an ESA program in Shelby County to a suburban school district around Nashville is a misrepresentation of the true facts.
If approved, funding for the vouchers would draw from lottery and sports betting revenue, the same source of funding for the Hope Scholarship. Lee says there's enough of it to go around. Mariana Bacallao, WPLN News.
Bonnaroo has announced its 2025 lineup. The Music and Arts Festival in Manchester, Tennessee has always prioritized a sense of fun, spontaneity. And WNXP music reporter Justin Barney says that this year it's taking a couple of very fun swings.
In the past, Bonnaroo has relied on naming one big headliner for each night of the festival, even though they book 30 very good acts every day. So in this year's lineup, they are emphasizing at least 3, quote, headliners each day, showing off the variety of their booking. So Friday is Tyler, the Creator, John Summit, and Glass Animals. Saturday is Olivia Rodrigo, Avril Lavigne, and Justice. And Sunday is Hozier, Vampire Weekend, and Queens of the Stone.
This year, Bonnaroo takes place from June 12th to 15th. Tickets are set to go on sale today at 10 a.m. You'll find more news anytime at WPLN.org. For a songwriter, the muse can be elusive. But for WNXP's Nashville Artist of the Month for December, Gillian Welch and David Rawlings, it was right in front of their eyes and ours. In East Nashville, WNXP music reporter Justin Barney stumbled upon the inspiration for their new song, Empty Trainload of Sky.
I ride my bike to work. There's a group of us who ride every morning from East Nashville into downtown. We meet at 8:15 a.m.
Hey, buddy! Thanks.
Let's go on a ride with frequent flyer David Gaston.
Good morning, Dustin. Good morning, Tony. How are y'all?
Almost right away, we pass Woodland Studios.
Owned by one Dave Rawlings and Gillian Welch.
One day we were riding by the building, and David told us that he had hypothesized and confirmed a theory about their new song, Empty Trainload of Sky.
Oh, got it. Okay.
David tells the story.
I had gone down to Grimey's because Dave Rawlings and Gillian Welch were signing their Woodland Studio album. I had only heard Empty Trainload of Sky off of that album. And as I'd been listening to it, thinking through the lyrics, it struck me, hey, sure sounds like they're singing about the train down in Shelby Bottoms. There's some lyrics in the beginning that describe the trellis so high. So got up to the front and had the question in mind to say, is this song about the train trellis down in Shelby? And Gillian just looked and said, it is.
Saw a freight train yesterday. It was chugging, plugging away. Across the river, the trestle was so high.
The train in Shelby. Now that you hear it, it's so obvious. And they would write about East Nashville because they own that huge building in the middle of 5 Points. They first walked into that building with producer T-Bone Burnett to record their album Revival. In 2002, they bought it.
I'll never forget sitting in the parking lot out there one night, and Peter Rowan was in town.
That is Gillian Welch.
We were still kind of in shock that we owned it. You know, when you sit at the bottom of the parking lot and you look up at it, it's very imposing. It's big. You know, I'm sitting there in the car with Peter, and I said, I can't believe, what have we done? This is crazy, man. We had committed, and we'd put down roots here. And he's like, now, just make it what you want it to be. You are the town you live in. Or the town is you.
Which takes us back to the bridge.
This is the Shelby Bottoms Railroad Bridge.
Can you say, I'm Lily Gonzalez, and I'm a railroad expert?
I'm not going to say that. Because it's not true.
Okay, what would be true then?
I'm Lily Gonzalez, and I'm a train explorer.
Together, we explored some facts about the Shelby Bottoms Railroad Bridge that were readily available on plaques in the park.
It was built in 1913 by the Louisville and Nashville Railroad Company. It's still in use every day.
What do you think they carry on there?
Probably oil and bricks and stuff that can't just be moved by airplane or truck or something. Probably.
What else?
This wasn't on the paper, but we kind of learned that. It's pretty rusty.
Oh! This is the song. Those are the trestles.
Yep, they are high.
Just a boxcar blue, showing daylight clear through. Just an empty train load of sky.
The more I've thought about it, I wish that I had had a different question, because the song goes on and describes being accosted by something, some sort of thought from that empty trainload of sky. She's wondering, should I go to the devil? Should I go to the Lord? What is it?
To the devil or the Lord, as it hung.
And my question, I wish had been, what was that thing? But ultimately, I'm glad I didn't ask that, because in the beautiful poetry of that song, that thing for her is going to be something different than that thing for me. And that's sort of the benefit and beauty of poetry, is that it's gonna work in me in a different way than it works in you, Justin, in a different way that it works in Gil.
From my eye, I say, hey, hey, mama.
You are the town you live in. Or the town is you.
Just an empty train load of sky. That's it. That's the story.
We do this roundup of Nashville news every weekday. Please consider subscribing on your favorite podcasting app. Thanks so much to all of you who've left 5 stars, a thumbs up, or a review in your app of choice. That little bit of love really does tell the algorithms that more people should hear about us. And of course, everything at WPLN News is listener supported. You can make a donation at WPLN.org. And that's it for today. Thanks so much for listening. Let's make this day a good one as we get ready for the snowstorm. And we'll catch back up tomorrow.